What up, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. Man, on this channel, we talk about crowdfunding all the time, and I love to get into it and really understand what goes into actually raising money from the crowd. So I'd love to study this, I'd love to research this, and I'd also love to bring to you tips, advice, tactics, tools, all the things you can use to actually empower you to raise money from the crowd. And today I kind of want to get into some of those quick crowdfunding tips that are going to help the beginners in the audience. So if you've never raised money from the crowd before, or this is your first time doing a campaign, I'm going to be getting into a couple of tips and advice for you so you can take action, you can actually crush it with your campaign, and hopefully this will also speed up the time that it takes in order to learn this art or this science. That being said, would love it if you've been watching some of my other videos to give me a thumbs up so other people know that this is worth their time. But that being said, let's dive right in and let's get into some of these quick crowdfunding tips. Okay, man, welcome back to this channel. And again, my name is Salvador Briggman. So I want to get into this and really understand what are some of these quick things that you can do to implement if this is your first time that you're raising money from the crowd. That way you can actually act on these tips and you can speed up the time that it takes you to do one of these campaigns and also have you be way more effective. I think that one of the things that, if anything, as a legacy that I have, I would love to be able to improve the success rates of crowdfunding campaigns so that more campaigns are successful on an average basis. So let's begin to get into some of these tips. The first tip that I have for you, if you are a beginner, is to be very clear about why it is that you're raising funds. Are you raising funds because you're trying to raise money for charity, your own personal crowdfunding campaign? Are you trying to raise money for a nonprofit organization? Are you trying to raise money for a real estate crowdfunding endeavor? Are you trying to raise money for a property? Are you trying to raise investment capital for a startup company? Are you trying to get a new company started, maybe making a physical product of some kind and raising money in order to bring this physical product into the world so thousands of people around the world can own this and they can give you feedback on it? What is your core reason behind raising money? Because that's going to really inform a lot of the strategy going forward. If you pick sort of the wrong approach, you're going to have the whole messed up strategy. So for example, doing a personal crowdfunding campaign, and I've written a book, Crowdfunding Personal Expenses, but doing that kind of a campaign is very different than, say, a physical product which you're trying to sell online and raising money to actually jumpstart some of those startup costs that go into creating a new e-commerce company. That'd be more in the lines of Kickstarter, Indiegogo. I have a great book out there as well called the Kickstarter Launch Formula. You're trying to raise money for real estate. That's gonna be a whole different kind of process going into that as compared to investment crowdfunding. So you really want to understand, one, what are you going to be using the funds for? Why is it that you're raising money? And what are some of the objectives or some of the goals that you have from actually doing this campaign? You gotta be crystal clear on that because that's gonna inform a lot of the other points in this process. Numero dos is that you gotta pick the right crowdfunding platform. And I don't say this lightly because I've had students who are trying to do one style of campaign and they're doing it on the wrong platform. And then they wonder why they are not successful, right? So you really want to make sure that you research and identify the best crowdfunding platform for your particular campaign, for your need, for your category, for what you're trying to do. There are so many crowdfunding platforms out there nowadays. You know, I could rattle off a couple off the top of my head. For example, you have Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, you have Republic.co, WeFunder, Start Engine. You have a ton of them, Seed and Smart. There are so many different types of crowdfunding platforms out there. Some of them are niche, some of them are bigger, some are catered to physical products, some are catered to more gadgets and gizmos, some are for creative types, some are for nonprofit fundraisers, some are for personal causes. So you really want to be very clear, what is the best possible crowdfunding platform for you? Because that's also going to inform your marketing strategy and the pool of strangers which you have, you can actually attract them to your campaign and thus raise money from the crowd. Tip number 3 is to understand the algorithm of the platform which you choose. And every algorithm is actually very different that's out there. For example, Kickstarter has their own unique proprietary algorithm, and then you have Indiegogo, which has GoGoFactor, and all the other different crowdfunding websites have their own algorithm when it comes to actually how do they propel campaigns, how do they make them trending, how do you actually, if you're launching a new campaign, get the attention of strangers and backers on that particular platform or donors or investors, whatever it is. The more you can actually understand the algorithm that the platform or the crowdfunding platform uses in order to rank campaigns, in order to promote certain types of campaigns, the more you can understand the algorithm, the more you can game the algorithm, the more you can actually have it working in your favor versus trying to actually work against it, which is going to be extremely difficult. So if you really want to get people to have attention and eyeballs when it comes to your campaign and allow them to actually check out your campaign page and even consider maybe becoming a backer, a buyer, someone who's contributing to your campaign in some way, you have to understand the way that the game works. But the same way that if you're going to play a game, like I love to play chess when I was younger, I was part of chess club, which is like super nerdy, right? And I love to play chess as well with my uncle when he was alive. You have to understand how the game works. works, how the different pieces move, a little bit of the strategy of the game. So if you can understand the algorithm of the platform which you are launching, you are night and day, head and shoulders above many of the other campaign creators out there trying to launch campaigns. Number 4, and I will be very honest with you that this is probably one of the hardest pieces for me when I was just getting started when it comes to marketing, when it comes to promotion, when it comes to selling, companies, even developing projects which I'm going to execute on. I wasn't always like this in my life. At certain points in time in my life, I found it so hard to follow through, to persist, to show up, and to actually move forward and follow through on different projects in my life. Over time, I've developed that skill set, and this is one of the most critical that you can be aware of, and that's number 4, develop a launch timeline. So that sounds really fancy, right? A launch timeline. What do I really mean by that? I just mean basically a step-by-step process of what you have to do every single week leading up to a particular launch. Now, the way that typically beginners kind of do this is kind of how actually I got started, which is like ready, fire, aim. So ready, fire, aim is like, hey, I want to do this thing. When are we going to do it? Maybe next week, right? And you don't necessarily realize all of the different components and pieces that go into launching an effective crowdfunding campaign. And that can lead you to launch something too quickly, and then it doesn't see results, and you get really frustrated, and then you abandon the thing when it actually did have tons of potential, right? Or you're just kind of always humming and hawing, and you're delaying, and then a year later, and I've had students who do this, right? They book up a coaching call and be like, Sal, I've been working on this thing for a year, and I should have done this way sooner, right? A year later, because of all the delays, they eventually launch their campaign. So you kind of want to be in the happy medium, right? Which is to have an effective launch timeline that also is realistic, that's also pushing you and causing you to actually, buckle down, to focus, to have some urgency when it comes to completing this particular campaign and the different elements of the campaign, whether that's a pitch video, whether that's a copy, whether that's the marketing strategy, right? Whatever it is, which I'll talk about next, you want to have a simple launch timeline. And when you can do that, and when you can really think about what's going to happen next and the week after that and the week after that, and it can be very difficult for some people as well to look into the future and really plan that backwards. The more clarity you have around this, the more you're actually turning this into more of a scientific process. So there is art, there is science, and I'd say one of the pieces when it comes to really having being an effective campaign manager or really running a good campaign, launching a campaign that doesn't just raise 10K or something like that, but really raises in the upper 5 to 6 figures, you got to have a timeline. You have to know what you have to do every step of the way. Want to take all the stress out of fulfilling your Kickstarter rewards? Fulfillment is the turnkey solution that puts product delivery on autopilot. The Top Campaigns uses trusted high-tech provider to store, package, and ship their products. Focus on growing your business. Leave shipping to the experts. Don't wait. Get a custom quote from Fulfillment today. Link in the description. Number 5, and I kind of spoiled this for you guys because I was talking about that in the last point, but that's really to create a marketing plan. Now, there's marketing and there's sales, right? Sales is everything that's happening when you're talking to someone, you're trying to persuade someone, trying to get them bought into your vision. And that maybe appears on video as well if you're on a pitch video, right? But marketing is a little bit different. Marketing is about branding. Marketing is about people who have never even met you before, come across your campaign, and they care about it. They actually want to back it. They want to contribute to it. They want to invest in it. They want to become a part of your community, which is insane, which is crazy. The fact that you can actually get strangers out there online to actually join your tribe. So you want to think about the marketing strategy a tiny bit, because not only is the marketing strategy going to be really important for enrolling people into your world, to your idea, what you're trying to accomplish, really care about, to follow the story, but also it's going to set the stage for whatever it is you're doing next. So for some creators that I talk with, this is just kind of like a one-off event, right? And they're just doing this for maybe like 3 months of their life. The majority of creators actually that I speak with though are trying to have a much bigger vision when it comes to their life. They want to make impact. They want to have legacy, right? They want to do something that's greater than just what themselves could do. They want to involve other people. They want to build a tribe. Now, whether that's coming out with a new product, whether that's building a nonprofit organization, whether that's raising capital for a startup, but which then changes the world and using crowdfunding to do that, they have a big vision. So think about this as a very compressed timeline where you have the ability to really, have a massive horn where you can tell everyone about this new thing that you're doing. You can get a ton of influx of people coming into this project. You can raise funds. You can get PR and media hits. You can have influencers talking about you. You can build your social media profiles relatively almost overnight. There's like nothing like that. It's almost like a boot camp. And that all starts with having a marketing strategy. So think about that. How are you going to get eyeballs, attention, get people to the campaign, have them having a sense of what you're trying to do from a brand perspective or what you're trying to do in a larger sense? Think about the marketing strategy. So number 6 is actually something that I've been working my entire life, my entire professional life, to provide to other people around the world. And that's to really seek out success stories, mentors, education, and training, which can push you forward. And when I got started in this industry, there was none of that, right? So I've been trying to work very hard to bring that kind of information and that quality education to you. But it's almost like if you think about it, you're trying to run a marathon. If you're trying to run a marathon, you're not gonna like wake up tomorrow and run, a half marathon, run like 10 miles, right? And did you double that if you're doing a full marathon? You're not just gonna immediately wake up, get out of bed. For me, I'd have some coffee first, right? But then of course I'd have to use the bathroom, which would suck. So maybe I'd have to spare the coffee for that day. But I would then just get out and start running. Like that doesn't really make sense. It's not very realistic, right? There's no timeline there as well. You're not really thinking about the process of running a marathon, because a marathon requires you to train. It requires you to have a step-by-step process for really ramping this thing up, for getting your body ready, for consuming the right food, right? For making sure that you're being hydrated, that your body can actually stand and withstand the intensity and be able to persist, right? Through even some of those difficult miles, and to have the mental fortitude and the strength. In addition, when you're doing it at a much higher level with your Olympic athlete, for example, right? Or your Michael Phelps or something like that, you also are surrounding yourself with coaches. You're also learning from the greats. Maybe you're trying to be a great quarterback or something like that, which is not necessarily my sport when I was younger. I love playing baseball and those kinds of things. But if you're trying to be a great quarterback, maybe you're also watching different plays and different footage that have happened even decades past, so you can learn about different plays and strategies which you can employ when you're trying to win the game, right? So there are different ways in which you can do this, but when it comes to crowdfunding and literally any other pursuit in life, you really want to seek out success stories. Who's raising money right now? Whether it's your category, whether it's a particular product, the platform, whatever, go and go look at people that are raising money every single week. So I've tried to make this much more accessible with my podcast, the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast, which is available on iTunes, on Spotify, available published version on YouTube, which is a little bit delayed. So go and check out the latest ones on Spotify and iTunes. But I try to share real world success stories, bringing people on my show and be like, dude, how did you do this? What was happening behind the scenes? So I try to do this in my own small way, but also take it upon yourself as well to do a little bit of research. In addition, when it comes to education, I'm putting out free videos every single week on these different topics. I have very inexpensive, low entry books like the Kickstarter launch formula, like crowdfunding personal expenses, like real estate crowdfunding explained, equity crowdfunding explained. Try to make this available and easy for you to consume, as well as audible versions, right? Really take a second to really study this, because the more you can study it, the more chances are you're gonna be successful at it, right? I kind of liken this back to when I was playing chess with my uncle, and for the longest time, my uncle would not let me win the game of chess. And I was always trying to, beat him, and I would never win. And eventually one day I picked up a book on chess strategy, and I happened to see this at a used bookstore. And I love reading books, right? I obviously also love writing them, but I love reading books, and like old books and like journals, leather kind of stuff. I'm big into stationery. So anyway, I pick up this book on chess strategy, and I start to, leaf through it. I started to learn a couple of different chess strategies. I was engrossed in this thing for like an afternoon, right? The next time I actually played my uncle, I was able to win. I was able to beat him. It was just simply because I understood more strategy. So you really need to buckle down. You need to learn from mentors. You need to educate yourself a tiny bit. Begin to train yourself just on a light basis. Could be just an hour or two every single week, and really seek out some of those success stories, so that way you can feel more confidence, and you also are downloading those tactics and strategy right into your mind. My last and my final tip for you in this video is that if you want to be successful, you got to be courageous. You got to be bold. You got to be willing to put yourself out there. And by that, I mean actually tell people that you are raising money. Whatever category it is, you got to be willing to toot your own horn. You really got to take this seriously. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. And there's so many rewards that come with when you're actually willing to put yourself out there. I've never met a student, I've never interviewed someone who's successful, I've never come across a successful campaigner who wasn't willing to put themselves out there. And unfortunately, when you do success, you also get a huge spotlight on you, right? It's almost like you become a micro celebrity in the space, and so does your brand. And that can be kind of intimidating for many people, because it also might mean, what happens if you fail? What happens if you fail with this campaign? Well, unfortunately, I think that if you really do want to be successful in a much larger way, if you do want to actually use this mechanism, which is available to us, was available for many, many, many years in the past, which is finally now something that you can do very easily nowadays. If you really want this to work for you, you got to be willing to stomach that, right? You really have to have this fear be an opportunity for being courageous, and you have to be willing to push forward some of those emotions, so that way you can actually get that end result which you want to have, which is being able to raise funds for whatever cause you're trying to do, being able to maybe produce a new product into the world, or help other people, or raise capital for your business, right? Whatever it is you're trying to use crowdfunding for, you gotta be willing to push through some of those feelings of fear, uncertainty, in order to actually make this happen. And in addition, be willing to put yourself out there. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. And one of the things that I do is one-on-one individual coaching calls, which are basically intensive coaching calls, which you can schedule with me. So I'm not always doing these because sometimes my life does get very busy, but I am doing them right now. So if you want to talk about your project, your campaign, what you're trying to do, if crowdfunding is even right for you, or the complete strategy, the blueprint, which goes into raising money effectively from the crowd, we can talk about that on a one-on-one coaching call. I've literally had so many people over the years say this was literally the most invaluable, incredible investment which they've made going into a campaign, and sharing with them things that they didn't even know about, right? It's kind of one of those things like you don't know what you don't know, right? When it comes to a new process. So if you find this video to be useful, I'm telling you, this is just like the tip of the iceberg. So if you want to book a one-on-one coaching call with me, you can go down below to the link in the description. We'll have that added at crowdcrux.com/coaching. But that being said, if you did like this video, give me a thumbs up. Hopefully at least spurred a little bit of thinking, a little bit of creative ideas maybe, or even just thinking about what I need to do next when it comes to a crowdfunding campaign. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.